Do you have a program for continuous discovery? Do you use like a formal system like that we've all heard of, or do you have your own system?
We do use a couple of different systems. Like we've been a longtime user of a product management platform to help us organize all of those things, which provides for a portal where customers can give feedback, and our internal teams can also, record feedback that they're hearing on customer calls. And so we use that.
As you progressed it, obviously your role must have changed. At the very beginning, it's just get users and then improve the product and so forth. What do you see your job is now as a founder?
Sometimes you have to do a lot of hard things a lot of times in a row before you get a proof point, right? Like things don't come easy. We certainly aren't an overnight success story, right? We've been doing this a long time. And, I just think doing common things for uncommon amounts of time just yields dividends. And that's why we're here today.
Cory, welcome to Product Growth Stories. I'm so happy to have you on the show. And you created AgencyBloc. I'd love to hear about what is it and what problem in the market are you really trying to solve?
Thanks, Jam. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So AgencyBloc actually started in kind of the mid 2000s. And really the reason it started was because we had started myself and two co-founders had started a website and digital marketing firm. And we were running into some customers that were looking for agency management solutions. So think about like a vertical CRM for like health and benefits. And so at that time, we had done enough websites and engagements in that realm that it was apparent that we really wanted to go deep in one kind of vertical. And so we launched AgencyBloc as a solution, I guess, officially in 2008, bootstrapped it out of the other company and really trying to solve for how agencies manage their day-to-day operations. So everything from bringing on new customers to managing their business, servicing those customers, and everything in between. And so, we launched again in 2008, and we tried the Iowa Field of Dreams approach, which is build it and they will come. It didn't quite work like that. So in about 2012, 2013, we started to build a team around it, added some full-time marketing, service, and tech to the team. And really from that point forward, it was a really great growth story around a lot of, referral business, word of mouth, and really growing from kind of the bottom up.
And for AgencyBloc, is it anybody who's taking this kind of business model that has an agency like service oriented business model, done for you kind of business model? Or is it a certain type or subset of agencies that you serve?
Yeah, great question. It's actually it's specific to the health and benefits space. So think of
in health, I see.
Independent insurance agencies that are servicing anywhere from, individual consumers that they're selling, insurance products to, all the way up to large employer groups that they might be servicing. And so it's very vertically focused. And that was really what was, attractive to us, is really going deep in like one specific industry. I'd spent a little bit of time at a health insurance carrier. So I kind of knew the industry, and we've learned so much along the way. You think things going in, and you really don't. Like you have to figure it out as you go.
Yeah, I love that. And so you've been at it for a long time, and and you're still here, and the product looks very polished. I'm wondering though, there's always a difference in how you acquire customers at the very beginning versus, what are you doing now after you have all the arrows in your back. So I'd love to hear kind of, how did you start with getting users for it? And then what are you doing today?
Yeah, great question. It's actually interesting. We started with a solution that was really for more upmarket agencies. So think of large wholesale retail folks where they're both selling direct to end consumers, but they're also distributing insurance products through downline agencies. And so that's called kind of a wholesale retail business. And that's really where the product started. But because our growth was so much inbound fed and really was started as a sort of an inbound machine, as you can imagine, we ran into a lot of customers that are like, hey, help me get off my spreadsheets. I just need to get onto a platform. And hey, I'm using Act and I should no longer do that. Or I'm using Outlook to try to manage my customers. And so
Act is like an old database, right? This is
that's exactly right. Yes. Yes. And so
that's old. Yes.
It wasn't sexy, it wasn't glamorous, but really we started with really getting insurance agents into the digital age by moving them to a platform. But if you think about, where we're at as a company today, that curve has actually started to go back upwards. And so we work with many like large wholesale retail agencies. That's really what the product was originally built for. But as you know, in business, it's hard to serve different ICPs. They're very different. Their needs are a bit different, but
Mhm.
fortunately we've been able to do really well. And again, I think it's because we're vertically focused.
Yeah, that gives you enough focus that you can manage a little bit of different needs across the customer base.
That's right.
And and you were saying inbound, does that mean you focused on SEO to grow?
We did, yeah. Lots of
Yeah.
SEO. Back in the day, we were doing a lot of like customer referrals. We had an amazing marketing team who really kind of like built this engine. It was really about the brand. And I remember the mandate when we hired a new marketing leader back in the early days. I was like, I want to reach out to 10 insurance agencies in our space. I want 6 of them to know what Agency Block is and what it does. And so she sort of took that as her mandate and frankly like just built an incredible brand, and that just turned in kind of this flywheel approach where we had a lot of folks coming to us via word of mouth. And in most cases, like back then, it was like sales wasn't reaching out to folks to see if they needed our solution. It was demos showing up on calendars and folks getting on calls to really consult with and teach them about our product and what it does and what it doesn't do. And so that's really what I mentioned as kind of growing grassroots through the market back in those
Yeah.
days.
Yeah, and yeah, it's funny, at least in my experience, you have this idea of who you want to which customers you want, and then you sort of go fishing, and then you wind up with like, "Oh, but I got the" they're not these fish are different. They're always
Yes,
like slightly
yes.
different. Okay, that's very interesting, and I'm curious. A lot of people are saying right now that search is down, just the traffic from search is down. And it's true,
Mhm.
especially for super duper top of funnel, like what is my own name? What is it, with these kind of searches. How are you finding? Is that in something
Yeah,
you've
it's a good
noticed?
question. We see a little bit of that, but honestly, I think we've also been able to get ourselves because of our brand and our recognition, we've also been able to show up in a lot of, AI prompts, if you will. So if someone's looking for an agency management solution on ChatGPT, we're going to show up. I think, I feel great that we are where we are as a business because I think it's harder and harder to get recognized if you don't have awareness out in the market today. Like I can't imagine launching a new business, and back then it was like, we just want to show up on page 1 of Google when they search for agency management, platforms. And, folks aren't doing that anymore. So to get that recognition, I think it's going to be much more complex for, startups and newer businesses. But we do get a lot of inbound traffic through, through AI channels. And also we've taken an approach of really spending a lot of time partnering with larger organizations that are looking to recommend technology solutions to their partners. And so that's a great way of kind of creating this network effect that I think you have to do. You can't just, rest your laurels on, generating inbound traffic from Google anymore.
And so it sounds like you're finding that the work you did originally for SEO has just carried over into feeding. I mean, that's what the AIs are eating. is
Yes, right. They've just
Yeah.
added a layer on top of it, I think is what's happened. But it also, it emphasizes the needs for like industry knowledge and things that our customers are interested in. Like compliance is a big thing in our industry. And so if they're out there looking for, hey, how do I better manage scope of appointments or call recordings? Like it's important to be a thought leader. And our marketing team has always done a really great job of helping to educate the market, which that then in turn creates this kind of like inbound funnel of folks that are, hey, they were just out there looking for this topical help on a topical area. And then it turns out that, they might be actually interested in pursuing an agency management platform.
As you built this, has there been anything that you were surprised to get wrong about your assumptions about the customer? Like anything at all?
We got a lot of things wrong,
Yeah.
JM.
Anything
Like
you want to
that's
share?
yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, I think, early on you think you have product market fit, you work with a few customers, you're building a new product, you feel like you have a pretty good handle on what the industry looks like, but I think the biggest thing is like, just listening to customers. Like that's what we've always done really well as a company. And I think that, they will, in many cases, they will tell you they're not bashful and they'll tell you what you're doing right and doing wrong. And so we got a lot of things wrong. I think we continue to reinvent our products to make them easier to use. And that's a big thing, obviously, with AI is to be really focused on like, how do I make them actually more productive and more effective rather than
Hmm.
just saying, hey, I added AI to the product and look at this cool new tool
Yeah.
and really staying focused on
Yeah.
like solving the actual business problem. I just feel like with where AI is at, everybody wants to be out in front and say they launched this whole new thing that, does all these things for you, but it doesn't solve for the real business problem that customers are really trying to solve today. So I can't pinpoint a single like time when we didn't learn a lot and benefit a lot from just spending time with customers.
And do you have a program for continuous discovery? Do you use like a formal system like that we've all heard of, or do you have your own system?
We do use a couple of different systems. Like we've been a long time user of a product management platform to help us organize all of those things,
Mhm.
which provides for a portal where customers can give feedback, and our internal teams can also, record feedback that they're hearing on customer calls. And so we use that. But our voice of customer has really expanded a lot under leadership of our chief product officer. We've got customer engagement programs. We do a lot of beta programs, like launching new features in our product. Let's try it out with a handful of customers to see how that works and get feedback and be able to iterate quickly. So it's pretty broad, but we do use some systems to help us organize that. We also use all of our sales and support teams use recorded phone calls, so we can put those into tools that help us bring out insights and topical areas, which, it's the common ones in the market that you've heard of,
Yeah,
but that's
these are
really
my
helpful.
favorite. These are my favorite tools when you can just ask, hey, what were the last objections for the last 6 months? And
Yes.
hey, there it is. I mean, that's what we need to write about.
I know.
There
And
it
as
is.
our company's gotten larger, like as a founder, I'm like, how do I get dialed into those conversations? It's so much easier now. Like I have access to the recordings. I can just look at the
Mhm.
summary. If I'm interested in like, wow, that's an interesting summary, I'm going to go listen to that phone call. Like it's
Mhm.
just so awesome to be able to get like, it's like having an IV like tied into the customer feedback, which
Yeah.
it was not as easy maybe 5 years ago as it is today.
Absolutely, yeah. And so now where the business is, what do you think, like, how has your role changed for I actually want to re-ask this. I'm just trying to think of how to word this. What I want to know is, like, as you progressed it, obviously your role must have changed. At the very beginning, it's just get users and then improve the product and so forth. What do you see your job is now as a founder?
That's a great, are you asking me like, what would I say I do here? Like from
Yeah. What would you say you do here,
Yeah,
Cory?
yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, and it's actually, very timely because my role early on was, kind of as co-CEO in the business. I had a co-founder. He had support and service and sales, and I had product and tech, and that was really kind
Hmm.
of how we divided the business. And then we got to a stage where it just made sense to bring in, a leadership team who had experience scaling vertical software companies. And so,
Hmm.
we have a full executive leadership team of which I'm now a part of. My co-founder, left the business a few years ago as part of that transition. And my role now has really transitioned even out of tech, and it's still a bit product related, but it's actually more oriented around strategy. Like, where's the business going? Where's the industry going? How do we find
Hmm.
ourselves at the right spot, a year or two from now in terms of where we think our customers are going to need us and show up in those ways. So it's really more in a kind of a strategy space, but I suppose still spend a lot of time tinkering and getting involved in the weeds on product things because I can't help myself. And I
Yeah.
just,
Starting
team,
messes.
yeah, I do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and I just apologize to our team in advance when I do that, but I just love it. Like it's fun to solve problems. It's fun to bring great solutions to customers. And that's why I'm still doing this.
I love that answer. And the kinds of problems you can solve at the beginning versus now are so different. Now you have this whole system that you can play with versus,
That's
you
right.
know, having smaller user base. And you don't have to answer this, but as a founder, are you aiming to exit, or is this something that you want to continue to hold on to and to run? Do you have
Yeah.
a goal for the company?
Yeah, good question. We actually, a few years ago, we actually brought in a new investor into the business because we felt like there was a lot more potential to grow and scale it than we were
Hmm.
willing to risk ourselves as the
Yeah.
as the founders, right? And
Yeah.
when you do something for a decade and you pick your head up and you're like, wow, like there's so much more opportunity. Our customers want us to solve many more problems, but you're looking at it as, well, I've got to push all of the chips back onto the table every
Yeah.
year, and that gets pretty difficult. And so I will say we were
Yeah.
incredibly fortunate to find a partner that was willing to invest in the business, allow us to de-risk a little bit, but also let us
Hmm.
do both, which is still scale the business, still, invest in the team and the company.
Hmm.
And so that was a really kind of a wonderful way for us to continue the vision, but certainly, something that, is part of our story.
I love that. Yeah, it's nice to have this hybrid option that isn't entirely one or the other, and you still get to do it, but
Yes.
without that, I know the stomach feeling of, okay, here we go again, that you do as a founder.
Yeah, and you
Well,
never know when your industry might change and things,
yeah,
things get disrupted and, that's part of it. And so, yeah, again, just I feel really fortunate we were able to find a really strong partner and now we're solving, many more things than we were at that time for our customers and continuing to grow and scale the business, which is it's just a fun place to be.
yeah, it sounds like fun. And so what advice would you give to other founders who are at this stage where you're like really starting to scale in a vertical SaaS? There's this, I don't know what point it is. Usually it's like 1 or 2 million when you have something kind of working and now you're trying to, let's get it to into more hands. What advice would you give for them now with so much has changed in 2026 with AI and everything?
Yeah. I think the one thing I've learned in doing this for a very long time is just don't forget to talk to your customers and really lean in on that. Like find out how
Mhm.
they're doing, get a strong voice of customer engagement programs in place so that you don't lose track of that. Because I think as our business scaled and grew, it became harder to get a pulse on some of that. So I think that's really important, and make sure you're solving the right problems for the right reasons, not just trying to make a splash with fancy software that looks good on the covers, but doesn't really actually help customers. I think that's the other thing. And the last thing is like sometimes you have to do a lot of hard things a lot of times in a row before you get a proof point, right? Like things don't come easy. We certainly aren't an overnight success story, right? We've been
Mhm.
doing this a long time. And, I just think doing common things for uncommon amounts of time just yields dividends. And that's why we're here today.
Are you saying there's no secret?
Hey, if there is, JM, I don't
I don't
have
have it
any
either.
of those. So yeah, if you
Yeah.
do, I would love it if you would send those over.
That's what I should start selling. But Cory, it's been a really great conversation. I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. Thanks so much.
Great chatting with you. Thanks for having me.